Let's meet our contestants. From Dallas, Texas, we have the beautiful Mrs. Feng Shui. From Forks, Washington, we have Civil Action. All the way from Montgomery, Alabama, we have Tess Ainge. And last but certainly not least, from Lima, Ohio, we have Contrad Lichus. All right, and there we have it, folks, our last Final Four. We have a tough round ahead of us today, and only one theorist will be left standing, so don't get too attached. Here to help us decide who the last theorist standing will be is our elite panelist of judges. All of them are professors at BYU-Idaho, and coincidentally, that's where we are filming this special episode tonight. Let's meet our judges. Please welcome the man with the biggest office, Stephen Smith.
Go Cougars!
Yes, Stephen, we all know how you love your Cougars. Our next judge you might recognize as the leader of this team, Omi Squad, from the game Star Wars Commander. Please welcome Michael Abel.
I actually like to be addressed as Omi Shah Belnobi. You may know my team is actually #1 in the world right now. We now have so many squads that we started assigning them colors. There's Omi Squad Green, Omi Squad Yellow, Omi Squad Blue.
Okay, we get it. You're the world's #1 dork.
All right, you two. Our next judge teaches a cornucopia of classes, which would be a fool to fail, since he practically gives you all the answers. Please welcome Stephen Stokes.
You know, this reminds me of...
All right, thank you, Judge Stokes. Our last judge is known as the professor who failed a polygraph for drug use. Please welcome the smart, the beautiful, and the sober Tiffany Jensen.
Wait. Just for the record, I've never used any type of controlled substance in my life, and I have never smoked marijuana.
And let me explain how this final round is going to go down. We have 4 different social current events. Each theorist must use their theory to explain the event. Their responses will be judged by our panel, and 3 theorists will leave here tonight with nothing, while 1 will be left standing. Who will it be? Let's find out.
The first event the contestants will be discussing is the legalization of marijuana.
Robert K. Merton said that everything in society has a function, whether we know it or not. For the idea in legalizing marijuana, there could be many reasons why society would want this to happen. Marijuana can be used for medical purposes, and there is a possibility that people would want to use it in that way. It is already being used by quite a number of people, and it would be better to legalize marijuana so we don't have to waste our money on imprisoning them for taking and dealing drugs. These are possible reasons why we would want marijuana to be legalized. Even though we don't really know the exact functions legalizing marijuana has, as a functionalist, I think that there are reasons why people are taking this drug, and legalizing it would help us find good functions for it and marijuana's benefits.
Thank you, Mrs. Feng Shui. Our next theorist is Civil Action.
The theorist of the early 1900s, Irving Goffman, explained the different ways people act throughout their life, or in other words, how they perform, like their front stage versus backstage behaviors and the different masks they wear each day. In relationship to the legalization of marijuana, as more and more areas around the U.S. begin to legalize marijuana, the backstage behavior in a way is getting erased. Because drugs and alcohol are illegal for individuals, especially teenagers, they often present themselves to others like their parents, people in authority, and leaders as innocent children that are trying their best to succeed, which can be the case, but so many teenagers that to their parents are perfect angels, and then on the weekends are off getting drunk or high, and more often than not, the parents have little to no knowledge of this. I have seen this example play out in real life, and a big reason for it is because these things are illegal. As individuals, we choose how we behave around ourselves and others. We decide what we want others to see us as. We decide how we see ourselves, and we decide how or which guards and masks to put up each and every day, especially in different settings. Another idea that goes along with impression management is that people act how they are defined. Like said before, young adults' front stage behavior may be a lot different from their backstage behavior. And this is closely related to the way teens interact, which is often through partying. As teens push for legalizing marijuana, this tendency to hide their backstage behavior of smoking may not be a priority. Everybody tries to present themselves as good, but as things in society change, the idea of what is good and bad changes as well. If more states legalize marijuana, smoking it becomes more socially acceptable, and I'm afraid that the front stage and backstage behaviors will collide. This is because there will not be much for teens to hide, and this can easily cause chaos. It is easily possible for the people to think smoking marijuana is less and less of a big deal, and it can ultimately not be looked at as a negative anymore.
We will now move on to our next event. Judge Stokes?
For our next topic, we will talk about the terrorist organization ISIS.
ISIS, the terrorist organization, is able to function through an idea of dependency and control on group solidarity, which Michael Hector helps us better understand. In general, most people prefer to be self-reliant, but they will join a group if it is going to provide them with something that they themselves cannot provide. The members of ISIS all have the same goal of establishing a new Islamic state, first across the Middle East and then across other countries throughout the world. That goal is something that they can achieve or accomplish on their own, and causes the members of the group to remain dependent on one another. A lot of the people in ISIS truly believe that Islam is the best religion, and they would do anything to spread it across the world. Many also truly believe they would not be able to achieve anything of worth if they weren't a part of the group. The group is also able to function because they are able to control their members with the threat of violence. ISIS has been known to publicly crucify and execute people every day if they are not following Muslim rules. For example, women who aren't fully covered are beaten and lashed out against, and even store owners who do not close down their shops during prayer time are violently punished. Just those acts of violence keep control over the members because they themselves could fall victim to those acts if they left and stopped fighting for the cause. It is through the incentive of dependency and control that the group continues to have solidarity.
Civil action? You're next.
The current commotion of the ISIS terrorist group is a concern for many around the world. There was a story on the news about this young girl, actually from my hometown, who had apparently fallen in love with a 32-year-old member of the ISIS group in Syria through online contact. As she tried to fly to him to get married and join him in fighting, she was caught by the Denver International Airport security after they had found books and CDs related to terrorism in her luggage. At this point, after caught in this primary act of deviance, she was labeled as a terrorist and a member of the ISIS group. As the social interaction or label was tied to herself, she tried to find more ways to help out the ISIS group and actually take on the label for herself of a terrorist before getting sentenced. She is currently in prison for 4 years, which will then be followed by 3 years of supervised release because of this act. At some point, the teen had stated, "If they think I'm a terrorist, I'll give them something to think I am." As this label continues with her, it changes her self-concept and how she feels she is as a young adult. In her case, she acted in ways that allowed her to connect, learn, and even train as a member of this group, mostly through online interactions with other members of the group. Her statement mentioned above before shows the potential secondary act that would be committed after being labeled. This example of Shannon Conley and her ISIS group involvement fits the labeling theory as stated by Becker perfectly and can be held true in many similar situations. This teen will probably be held to this deviant label for the rest of her life through these judgments from others, and her social identity will never be the same. This one complicated act of deviant behavior that got caught and then soon labeled results in Conley's now deviant motivation. Although she may think she is no harm to society, she says she will continue to stand behind ISIS and considers herself a member of this terrorist group.
Contradictions? You're next.
Well, I feel that this issue is best explained using the conflict theory. Due to the supposed suppression created from the intentions of other splinter groups from Islam to innovate and alter the Quran's teachings to fit more in the culture of today's world, radical groups like ISIS are seeking to revert back to the original teachings of the Quran. Although I personally do not support their actions and their behaviors, they do hold validity to the fact that they are only trying to live according to the teachings of their prophets and holy scripts. ISIS's main goal is to establish a new Islamic caliphate across the Middle East. A caliphate is a form of Islamic government led by a caliph, a person considered a political and religious successor to the Prophet Muhammad and leader of the entire Muslim community. As my colleagues Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels often talk about, I believe that the strains created by the unbalance of power both religiously and politically has created an ample environment for ISIS to emerge and to gain leverage by using the religious and political means to support their cause. Just as the bourgeois developed a sense of false consciousness to oppress the proletarians, using capitalism, the proletariat's goal is to develop ideals and rise to power to avoid oppression. The same can be applied in the fact that the leaders of ISIS saw the attempts to innovate the Islamic teachings and believed to fit more in the world in which we now live in as a threat to their beliefs. ISIS questioned the legitimacy of these innovators' authority to alter their religion and sought to control and to protect the religion in intense radical measures. Hence the crucifixions, extreme methods of executions, and terrorist acts, all done in the name of their religion.
Judge Stephen, what's the next topic?
The third topic is fight the new drug.
Okay. As a conflict theorist, I'd like to share my point of view on the matter. As a huge supporter of FT&D, or fight the new drug, the false consciousness associated with pornography and love is damaging today's societal definition of love. Pornography, according to the group and its supporters, damages the person's ability to realize what sex between two partners committed to each other really is. So unless society recognizes the negative effects pornography has and takes corrective action now and tries to fix this problem before it becomes an even larger issue, then we will find ourselves with an even greater problem in the future. The impacts of pornography can be directly related to what Max Weber teaches. That is, that the impacts of economic surplus pornography offers is most often developed and presented with the glamours associated with the lures that the power that accompanies wealth and physical attractiveness. True material power can be gained, but Fight the New Drug argues that there are inequalities that follow and that there is something much more valuable that is lost in the process. The technologies that exist in today's world prey on the honor that needs to exist in certain status groups. As Weber talks about, the power and surplus conflicts with self-interest in dealing with the status of intimate relationships in the name of love and not lust.
Mrs. Feng Shui, you're next.
The idea with Fight the New Drug is that they want to show that there is less of a function for viewing pornography and it actually implements more harm than help. This organization is effective because they assure that viewing pornography gives less rewards and therefore there are less reasons for viewing pornography to continue. Davis Moore's theory would say that they use the functional importance. A society will decide which function gives more benefits and gets rid of the contrasting function. This organization does well in pointing out the faults in pornography and bringing up the fact that pornography is doing more damage than good. Pornography is pushing people away and destroying families, and they have the studies and statistics to back it up. Due to the fact that pornography is failing at satisfying a majority of people and others are getting educated on why it is unethical. It will become less of an item in society and Fight the New Drug will ultimately win.
We have one more event before we find out the results. Judge Eagle, our last topic, please.
We will be discussing the legalization of gay marriage.
Just as Bloomer had said, there are three premises that tie into symbolic interaction. The first one mentions that humans act toward things on the basis of the meanings that they have for them. To explain this with the current outbreak of trying to legalize gay marriage, there could be multiple ways an individual could tie meaning to marriage. A child that grows up in a Christian centered home, attaches meaning to religion and essentially learns that marriage is between a man and a woman, and would therefore most likely act negatively towards legalizing gay marriage. On the other hand, a child growing up in a home with gay parents may view it completely different. Whether they act on the same homosexual lifestyle, they attach a somewhat normal meaning to this kind of relationship, which often results in support for legalizing gay marriage. This case would also be true for people who may grow up in a non-religious home or an individual who him or herself struggles with same-sex attraction. The second premise states that the meanings of things derive from social interaction. Like stated before, these meanings were all mostly attached in a home setting, which typically is true. As children grow up, parents teach them what is right and wrong and different views they may have. Children primarily form views and opinions inside a home, but this can also be found through interactions at school, church, and other social activities. Lastly, the third premise says that these meanings are dependent on and modified by an interpretive process of the people who interact with one another. This shows that these meanings are forever changing as we meet new people, learn new things, and socialize in different ways. Although they constantly change, individuals heavily rely on the knowledge and these views they attach. As we continue to socialize and grow up, we find out what we ourselves want to believe and then solidify those meanings as we go about our life. Regardless of the case, the type of environment that we grow up in allows us to symbolize love and what is considered love, and it will be different for everyone and can be projected as one chooses to support gay marriage or not.
Mrs. Feng Shui, you now have the floor.
Like Emil Durkheim has said, religion has served a function in our society for decades. They have been used to help to keep others in order and unify societies. The issue is that religion is slowly becoming less important to our society. Less people claim a religion and go to church. Due to the lack of function religion has created, more people are comfortable with admitting towards their attractions towards the same gender. Before, when most people relied on their religious beliefs, gay marriage was not acceptable. Now, standing up for your rights and wants is a praised attribute in America. Marriage is no longer a religious thing to do, but just a tradition that homosexual people want a part in as well. More people are accepting to legalizing gay marriage. If we do legalize it, we will find harmony between groups of people within time, and homosexual individuals will get the chance to be free to choose if they marry someone or not.
Tess Ainge, you have the last word. Make it count.
The homosexual population throughout the years has been significantly increasing. Back in the day, people used to be ashamed of their same-sex attractions, and they would try to hide it. But now, people are a lot more open about who they are. They're beginning to accept themselves, and they really want other people to be accepting of them as well. Within the past few years, the LGBT community has really grown together and pushed for the legalization of gay marriage. This is due to the fact that the group members all have the same selective incentives. They all want to receive the same benefits that a normal heterosexual couple would be able to receive. And they all want to be able to be legally bound to the one they love. This is because they feel that everyone deserves equal opportunity. Manker Olson is a theorist who originally came up with the idea that if there is a common incentive that can come from a group, then there will be a reason for everyone to want to come together and truly work for the cause instead of just free riding. As more and more people with same-sex attractions started coming out and revealing themselves as gay, the world started to take notice. Slowly but surely, the world began to realize just how many gay members really do exist, and eventually even non-members of the LGBT community began to help in their fight for the legalization of gay marriage. If it weren't for the common selective incentive that caused more and more LGBT members to step out of their comfort zone and reveal themselves to the world as different, then the legalization of gay marriage would have never even been considered. While it is still not legal in every state, the fact that it is in some states has been a huge win for them.
And we're back. Our esteemed judges have made their decision, and I have here in my hand our last theorist standing. Let's find out,